Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday today is. I hope you guys are surviving the heat. Whew, any way that you can. Sprinklers, swimming pool, maybe just putting a nice cool rag on the back of your neck. But woo, it's already a hot one today. All right, well, today's story is, to go along with the hot weather, is called Curious George Goes to the Beach. Curious George is one of my favorites. I have lots of favorites, really. This is by Margaret and H.A. Rays. Curious George Goes to the Beach. All right, so find a cool spot, have a seat, maybe close your eyes for a minute and pretend you're at the beach. Here we go. This is George. He lived with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today, the man had a surprise for George. He took George to the beach. They found a spot on the warm sand. Then, another surprise. George saw his friend, Betsy. "Look, Betsy," her grandmother said. "It's Curious George." But Betsy didn't even smile. She had never been to the ocean before. She was scared. "I know you're a good swimmer," the man told her. "You'll be fine once you get in the water." Feeling better, Betsy walked toward the shore with her grandmother. George helped spread the beach blanket and set aside their lunch. He was looking forward to a picnic, but it was not yet time to eat. So we're getting everything ready. Do you guys like going to the beach? It was time to play. In no time, George was having fun. He learned a new game. He dug in the sand, and he made a new friend. Monkeys are good at making friends. When he took a break, George watched the lifeguard. The lifeguard sat in a special chair. Sometimes he blew a whistle. There he is. He's playing ball, and he's burying his man and his friend. He found his new friend, the crab, and he's watching the lifeguard. And sometimes he looked through binoculars. It looked like fun to be a lifeguard. George was curious. Could he be a lifeguard? Before long, the lifeguard took a break. Here was George's chance. Watching the crowd from up in the special chair, George felt just like a lifeguard. He looked through the binoculars. There was a lot to see at the beach. He saw seagulls flying high above, and he saw Betsy on the shore below. She still had not been in the water. Then the lifeguard saw George. Uh-oh. "Hey," he yelled, "that's no place for a monkey." George thought it was a fine place for a monkey, but he did not want to cause trouble, so he climbed down. So if you look, there's Betsy, and there's the lifeguard. Back at the beach blanket, George was hungry for a snack. No one can miss just one cracker, thought George. He took one out and put it on a napkin. It looked good. Now, if only he had some cheese. Uh-oh, what happened to his cracker? Well, he would just have to get a new one. George found another cracker, then turned back around. But now his cheese was gone. Who could be taking his snacks? George was curious. He put down his cracker and waited. What do you think is happening to his cheese and crackers? Any ideas out there? Let's see. Now George saw who was taking his treats. It was a seagull, and he was still hungry. George took out another cracker, and the bird took it right out of his hand. What fun to feed the seagulls. George saw more seagulls down by the water. Betsy was there too. George was curious. Could those seagulls be hungry? Did you guys guess the seagull was the one probably taking it? Indeed they were. Soon a whole flock had gathered. George could not feed them fast enough. Luckily, Betsy was glad to help. Out of the basket came more crackers, cookies, a cake, and even the bread for sandwiches. Still, the birds were hungry, but when George reached for more snacks, the basket was gone. He and Betsy were having so much fun, they didn't notice the tide coming in. It's called a tide. Believe it or not, the ocean actually rises and it lowers. And so when the tide comes in, that means the ocean is rising. So it rises a little bit and then it goes right back out. They didn't notice the picnic basket was floating out to sea. George felt bad. He hadn't meant to lose the basket. Could there be a way to catch it? George thought, and thought. Then he remembered the lifeguard. George was no lifeguard, but to save the basket, he knew just what to do. Quickly, he found a float and carried it to the water. Jumping aboard, George began to paddle. He paddled out a little farther, and a little farther, and a little farther, until finally, he reached the basket. Betsy cheered. Then, as George paddled back to the beach, Betsy swam out to meet him. Everyone was glad to see George safe on shore. The lifeguard, who had seen everything from his chair, said, "That was some rescue." George felt proud. The man with the yellow hat picked up the basket. He was curious. "George, is this our basket?" he asked. I wonder why he's asking that. Poor George, after all that, the basket was empty. There would be no picnic on the beach, and it was all his fault. Then Betsy's grandmother said, "Won't you join us for lunch? We have plenty. And look, now we have a reason to celebrate, thanks to George." They did have a reason to celebrate, because Betsy was in the water, and she wasn't scared anymore. She was having fun. After everyone joined Betsy and George for a swim, it was time to eat at last. Hooray for Betsy! There were sandwiches and chips, bananas, cookies, and watermelon. There was plenty for everyone, and there was even a little for the guest. Who do you think the guests are? Take a look at the picture, what George is doing. See how he's feeding the seagull? That was their guest. The end. Curious George. He's so funny. He's always getting into some kind of mischief. Well, you guys, have a great day. Try and stay cool. It's supposed to be a warm one again. So I hope that you are able to get into the sprinklers or the swimming pool or something today. I will talk to you guys all tomorrow. I love you all, and bye-bye.